with Imperial. Today's review will be the movie The Little Things, starring Denzel Washington, Jared Leto, and Rami Malek. Denzel plays as Deke, Albert Sparma as Jared Leto, and Detective Baxter. You have some cameo appearances of Flo Dunnigan, played by Michael Hyatt, and Terry Kinney. He plays as Captain Ferris. The setting is in the 90s in Los Angeles, and of course, during this time, the stuff that goes on in this movie, everything is not filmed, so they get away with a lot of stuff. And detectives at the time don't have cell phones like we do in present day, so that wasn't a thing either. Now, what happens is at the beginning of a movie, they have a female named Tina Salvatore. She's driving on a lonely road by herself at night, and someone is chasing her down. And while they're chasing her down, they try to run her off the road, and she manages to get by at first. They act like they was going to stop, but they didn't. And she ends up pulling over at a rest stop trying to get away, and the rest stop diner is closed. The person pulls up behind her, and they open up their trunk, getting up their gear. They can't really find her, so she runs off in through the like a deserted area, finds another highway, sees a truck driver, flags him down. She gets away. He doesn't really see who was after her though. That person gets back in the car and you just see their boots, and they drive off or whatever. So um, you have Denzel, where he was relocated to. He has to go pick up evidence in Los Angeles, and to his old precinct he was at. And so he gets to see the newer version of him, played by Rami Malek, Detective Baxter. And everybody's pretty much, he's like a superstar detective, and they're telling Denzel character Deke, hey, you need to stick around, maybe you can learn something. And he's in the middle of trying to find the serial killer, and he gives the community hope, and Deke pretty much is telling him, hey, you want to keep telling them that stuff, and you really don't have nothing. So a woman is killed while Denzel is in town, and so Denzel pretty much is like he gonna go with him to see if he can give him some pointers. And Denzel goes into deep thought, and it was the outage. And when the outage come back, you get to see the loud music playing, blood everywhere. And Denzel looks across the highway, across the building where the person who killed her was probably watching her for some time. And so he goes in there and he starts thinking deep. Now you find out that Denzel, why he was relocated, because he had a situation where a case was unsolved and he took it bad, lost his marriage, lost relationship with his daughters, and he never forgave himself. So you think at this time, and he can't let this case go, so he wants to help Detective Baxter. So he stays on the case, but Detective Baxter is reminding him of himself. Consumer work, no relationship with your kids, no relationship with your wife, marriage is failing, you're not putting in the time. And so, but the Detective Baxter is invested. He loves his job and he want to help people. And so they dig deeper. And so when the female's body was at the coroner's building, Deke went to go see her. Her name is Flo, and they got a cool like rapport, working relationship. And she known from when he was back in the area, and she told him like he's back now for this moment. And she pretty much told him like, hey, if you mess up again, I'm not gonna be able to have your back. So you don't know what she meant by that, but you'll find out later in the movie. The movie goes on. Deke digs deeper. Detective Baxter is coming up empty. They're coming up on a lot of dead ends. So the deeper Deke investigates, he goes into where he sees that the manager of the building where the apartments was, the room there was a bad refrigerator, and they were like, well, where did this? Why wasn't you had this fiction? She did, but it was canceled. So that triggered him to dig deeper to go to like people who do repairs in the area who would have access to knowledge like that. And so what happens is when he digs deeper, I guess he finds that it could be some people like off the books and stuff like that. So he knows some shady stuff going. That leads him to Albert Smarma, and he automatically suspects him, and he starts following him. And Albert sees that he following him, so Albert pulls over one day, and he had a car for sale, and then he no longer had it for sale. And so Denzel was like, "Hey, I want to act in general, like, well, what's the trunk space like?" And so Albert just looked at him, and then Denzel left off. And then when Denzel was telling him on the highway, Albert dipped on him, and then seen Denzel on the other side of the highway and came by and was like, with the trunk space like. Now Denzel at this time got his gun up because he know Albert is noticing playing games. So he like, I know this is our guy, but we gotta be dependent on him. And so they pretty much bring Albert in for questioning. That's where you see Denzel in the trailers, you know, talking to him. They playing good cop, bad cop, or whatever. And what happens is the same day that they brought him in question, they had the person Tina, character Tina that was in the beginning of the movie, come in to give her statement, and they basically gave her, they was going to give her some mugshots to look at if anybody was familiar. Now keep in mind, I said she didn't see anybody, so when she went to the bathroom, she asked because she used the bathroom. She said she'd make it back to the other detective's office. On her way back, she's tying her shoe and she sees Albert. So now when she's going through all the mugshots, she says, "How about this guy? I want to see him." And they're looking at her like, "Well, why you want to see him?" And she was like, "Well, don't you have him here in the station right now? Maybe I could get a better look at him." And then they looked at it. So they can't let her see him because she already seen him. So that's who the person she's most familiar with. It defeats her case because she didn't really see him. So there was a wash with her. And so, but they know this is him. So what they do is they Detective Baxter calls Albert, pretty much, you know, apologizes and says he wanted to take him out for drinks. And so when Albert goes out to meet him at the bar, Denzel dips in his house and looking all through the house trying to find some evidence, and he stumbles upon like a trap door underneath a rug, and inside of there got news clippings of a lot of different murders, and it has like some like evidence that is from different women that you assume right now that Albert has killed. And so when they took some evidence, they had the DNA people to match up the DNA, and they got to match up like 8 pieces, but the DNA only came back like 6 or 7 or something like that. So it wasn't enough to fully convict Albert. So they're back to square one. And so Baxter asks Deke, "Hey, in there, did you see a red beret?" Now the person victim that he was trying to find information on, she wore a red beret. And Deke was pretty much, well, if I had 5 more minutes in there, I probably could have seen it. And so they go back, and now they're trailing Albert's house, and they're on a stakeout. And Albert pretty much leaves. Well, he doesn't leave. They don't know where he's at. Oh, pretty much. But they're doing a stakeout of his. He was at like a nudie bar or whatever, and so Deke was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go get us some black coffee." And when he goes and get the coffee, Albert appears, and now Albert and Detective Basket is having a back and forth conversation. So Albert at this moment is pretty like, "Hey, playing with antagonizing Detective Baxter. He jams him up against the wall, find out he don't have any weapons on him, and pulls out the picture of the woman. And he said, "What about her?" And she was like, "Oh, I know her. I know where she's buried at." And I know where she's buried at. And he was like, "Well, I could take you there." And so Detective Baxter leaves his car there, jumps in the car with Albert to go to this place. Now on his way Albert pulling off, Deke is coming up the street seeing them pulling off. So he hurried up, runs, and jumped in the car to trail them. Now they're about 20 minutes ahead of him. So when they get to the location, Albert is like, "She's buried over here." "Oh, I think she's buried over here." So he's playing games. And then Detective Baxter's like, "Well, you dig her up." And he pretty much was like, "No, I'm offering this as a peace offering." So he's just digging and digging. He's not getting anything. But meanwhile, Albert is antagonizing the detective. And then what happened, he touched a nerve. He talked about Detective Baxter not having a relationship with his daughters, and he's a bad father, a bad husband. So out of anger, Detective Baxter turned around, bashed Albert in the head with the shovel. Like, I think he hit him like twice, and then ran over top of him like, "Hey, get up, get up!" But he was unresponsive. By this time, Denzel is pulling up and sees what took place and went over to check Albert. He's dead, and so he jumped right into action and said, "Hey, dig a hole 12 feet deep, bury him." And he's pretty much saying, "Leo, you're gonna go back and say the lead you had on Albert, it was a wash. Tell him you need to take some time off for work, get your thoughts together, and go home, clear your thoughts, spend time with your family." He said, "But I'm letting you know, once you come back, don't dig. Do not dig. Do not pull his name up and research anything, because it's going to drum up conclusions that you might have something to do with his disappearance or whatever, and then you're going to start feeling bad about it, and then it's going to all blow up in your face." So Detective Baxter goes home. He goes home, and he pretty much you see him in a pool watching his daughters playing the pool, and then wife know he's disturbed, and he's just sitting there off in space. Someone drops an envelope off, and inside the envelope is the red beret he was looking for, and then there was a letter in there that said "No angels." Then it shows Deke at his home. He's burning evidence, and so he gets to this one last box, and it goes back to where the coroner Flo, why she said, I won't have your back again. When he was looking for the serial killer earlier in his younger years, he seen a victim. Well, he didn't see a victim. He was in a like a wooded area. It was dark, and he shot first and didn't see who he was shooting. When he shot, it was the victim running, and he shot her in her chest and killed her. So the coroner knew he was a good guy, and he didn't mean it, and he was there with his captain, and the coroner pulled a slug out of the woman. But she said in the report and in front of the captain, and he watched it, that pretty much the reason for her death was stab wounds, and she didn't say it was the bullet. And so that's why she said she wouldn't have his back no more, because that's that's something mentally he would have to deal with. He didn't want Detective Baxter to go through the same thing he did, even though they knew Albert was dirty, but they didn't have the full proof. So he didn't want him to have to live with. He just killed this man. His career is messed up. Family situation is messed up, and because of what he did. So this was Denzel's way of paying it forward and helping him cover his situation up. So overall, it was a decent film. It wasn't like the movie Seven, but in that moment at the end where Albert and Albert and Detective Baxter is having that conversation, you're thinking of the movie Seven, if you've seen the movie Seven, because at the movie Seven is about seven sins, and they were trying to find a serial killer. They found him at the end, And when they found him, finally, it was Brad Pitt's character, the young detective, and Morgan Freeman's character was on his way to where they was at. And so Brad Pitt's character and the killer was sitting up there having a conversation. And then while he was having this conversation, he started to talk to him about the young detective and his wife. And the wife was pregnant. And so this was the last sin. And so Morgan Freeman was pretty much pulling up at the time where he's having this conversation. And so the killer is telling him, hey, look in that bag over there. And then he looks in the bag, it's his wife's head. So he knew instantly he would have no time to think. He would just react off of anger. And Morgan Freeman was trying to tell him, no, like stop, don't look in the bag. And he couldn't get there in time. And by the time he got up to the situation, Brad Pitt had killed the killer. And that's what the killer wanted him to do, or whatever. And so it went off like that. So this ending was kind of similar to the ending of the movie 7, but not with that twist. So I thought when they was at that moment, he was going to dig up his wife. I was going to say, whoa. So they did that just like 7, but they didn't. They went in another round. So the ending didn't end in my expectations. My 4-star rating system, I'm going to give this movie a 2 out of 4 stars. You know, the acting was good between Denzel, he always do well, Jared Leto, and Rami Malek, who played in the hit movie on USA, Mr. Robot. So they all did well, but I give it a 2 out of 4 stars. Check it out if you haven't. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment. Till next time.